Welcome on this snowy afternoon from New York City. We have people all over from Miami, Maureen and Stu, and I heard someone from Hawaii, so thank you for joining us. Welcome to the New York City Affiliate Leadership Luncheon in support of the New York City PurpleStride 2021. This is our official kickoff for our PurpleStride event. My name is Jenna Shasma, and I am the PurpleStride Chair. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our survivors, caregivers, volunteers, supporters, and industry partners. You guys are the ones that really drive the success of the New York City affiliate of PanCan. This last year has certainly been a challenge due to COVID-19, but pancreatic cancer won't stop, and neither will we. We have made progress. However, with a 5-year survival rate of only 10%, that is not acceptable. We cannot do this alone. We must continue to work together for a better tomorrow. We have an exciting program this afternoon. We will review the New York City affiliate team and their accomplishments. Then we will review our 2021 PurpleStride and share best practices. And finally, we will move to meet our Meet the Expert panelists and hear from one of our longtime PurpleStride and PanCan corporate partners. It takes many volunteers to run the New York City PurpleStride. Alice Chung leads the affiliate as the affiliate chair. Susan Burke is our team and individual chair. Rebecca Chang is our sponsorship chair. Zabine Mirza is our event experience chair. And lastly, Brittany Ross is our volunteer chair. If you are interested in being more involved with PurpleStride and joining our committee, please let us know. You can send us a message in the chat box. 2021 marks the 12th year of the New York City PurpleStride. We have raised over $5 million and had over 22,000 participants over those last 12 years. PurpleStride is the #1 way PanCan raises money to fight pancreatic cancer in a comprehensive way through scientific research, patient services, government advocacy, and community engagement. Thank you to all for continuing to fight, to support the fight. This year's New York City PurpleStride event is taking place on Saturday, April 24th. So please be sure to mark your calendars. Registration for the event is free. You can start or join a team today. Since this year's event is a walk from anywhere, you can recruit team members from across the country and ask them to set a fundraising goal. I also suggest linking your fundraising page to Facebook. You really will be surprised who will start donating. We would like to thank our current sponsors for the event, our gold sponsor, Marine Data Systems, and our gold media sponsor, WFAN and WCBS Radio. If you are interested in being a sponsor, please let us know, and you can also send us a message in the chat box. It is now my pleasure to introduce Stu Landy, founder and board member of the Marine Data Systems, a leading provider in security integration and computer systems to corporate businesses in the US and Latin America. He is currently the Executive Vice President of MDS. Stu is a continuous volunteer and speaker for PanCan after surviving pancreatic cancer for 10 years. MDS has been supporting the New York City PurpleStride since 2014, and we are so grateful for all they have done to help further our mission. Please welcome Stu Landy.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me speak. I'm not a very good speaker, but sometimes I get information across that's important, and that's what my intention is today. So it's going to be 11 years, actually, in April, that I was diagnosed. Well, first of all, I went for a routine exam, and they found a spot on my pancreas, and they suggested that I immediately check it out. I did that. I subsequently was told that I had pancreatic cancer after some tests were made. I think they called it carcinoma in situ. kind of an early stage, but it was classified as pancreatic cancer. I was jolted into a new reality. I had read that PanCan had a very poor survival rate. I think it's 10% after 5 years. And my life at that time was completely turned upside down. Nothing I thought was important anymore. I wondered, are there any cures? How long do I have? Who can I talk to? And I searched the top doctors in New York, top hospitals, and tried to make some appointments to find out what my course of action would be. I contacted the PanCan organization at that time, and they promised to have somebody call me and tell me what the future looked like or what I was in store for. The person who called me helped me very much, helped me from PanCan. It happened, they called me the next day, and they told me what I was about to go through. I was told I needed a Whipple procedure, and they told me all about that and what I was going to experience. And that helped calm me down a lot, but I still was very, very nervous. And I basically learned a few lessons, many that I'm still practicing today. And that's what I wanted to let you guys know, let the audience here know, those people who either have been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer or know people who were diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Yes, you can survive. I have to admit that you have to be lucky, but you can survive. And if you get the right care, those odds are even greater. So the lesson one I learned was see experienced doctors, those doctors that have done many Whipple and procedures related to pancreatic cancer, because it is a special area and you have to be knowledgeable. And also, very, very important, is don't hesitate to get second and third opinions. I actually had 3 opinions. I ended up having my Whipple at Johns Hopkins University by a gentleman called Dr. John Cameron, who at that time, he subsequently retired, but he did the most Whipples, I think over 2,000. And I ended up selecting him for various reasons. I think the first doctor told me that they'd remove my whole pancreas and I'd have to walk around, if I survived, with insulin continually pumped into my body. I think they called it brittle diabetes, but that was very scary. Second doctor gave me a better suggestion. And the third doctor, Dr. Cameron, he sounded to me as the most logical. So it does pay to check around. Don't just, certainly go to people who have that knowledge and hear what they have to say. So lesson 2, talk to survivors. The people at PanCan provided me with some really reassuring information certainly about the diet I needed to follow after I had the Whipple and what kind of pains and issues that I would experience. So when it did happen to me, I was already prepared for it. And that information and the volunteer PanCan was excellent. Lesson 3 was keep educating yourself because things are constantly changing. And organizations like PanCan have made that happen with money and donations and research and more attention and people that are known like Alex Chabot, who just recently passed away. We're just mentioning the CEO of Marriott. That brings attention to the cause and that's very helpful. Lesson 4, which is the most important lesson I learned, and that is to enjoy your life every minute of the day. Nobody has a next. Nobody knows what could happen. Take away all those bad times and replace them with just enjoying every moment. And I try to do it. I'll be honest, I don't do it all the time, but I keep thinking about it. What a wonderful thing it is to have my life and enjoy going to Miami, walking, going in the water, and all these things, which I used to take kind of like for granted. So enjoy every minute. And lesson 5, which is also one of the most important things I learned, is give back. That's where you get the most joy. And we've been giving back to PanCan and lots of other, fortunate enough to be able to do that. But that's where I get, and my wife, we both get the most pleasure. And so another lesson I learned. So that's basically what I wanted to convey. I'm around. I'm lucky. I'll be happy to help with PanCan and looking at what happened with the vaccines. A miracle. They were able to come up with vaccines in a year. Unbelievable. So why can't we do that with PanCan? When we could, you know, it's like when I used to ask my lawyer about a problem I had, he used to tell me, Stu, the answer is money. What's the question? And that's what I'm saying here with PanCan. The answer is money. We got to contribute, enable the doctors and the researchers to do their job, and I think we'll have a cure. That's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you, Stu. They were great tips. And, you know, unfortunately, you brought back memories for me. My mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and hearing that initial diagnosis and, you know, and how scary it is when you hear that you have pancreatic cancer and all the hard efforts that you do to figure it out, you know, and appreciating every day is what you have to do. So thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
That you do. So it is next my pleasure to introduce our experts this afternoon, and I'll ask them to get ready to unmute themselves as we begin our discussion. I would like to introduce first Lynn Matresian, who holds a PhD and MBA. She is our Chief Science Officer at the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. Prior to joining the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, Lynn put her scientific training to work for 25 years, leading a research laboratory dedicated to understanding cancer metastasis. She was the founding chair of the Department of Cancer Biology in the School of Medicine at Vanderbilt University. She is the president of the American Association for Cancer Research, AACR, and a special assistant to the director of the National Cancer Institute at the National Institutes of Health. She was elected to the AACR Academy, which recognizes and honors distinguished scientists whose major scientific contributions have propelled significant innovation and progress against cancer. Lynn received a PhD in molecular biology from the University of Arizona and an MBA from the Owen Graduate School of Management at Vanderbilt University. Next, we have Dr. Manuel Hidalgo, who is an MD and PhD. He is the Chief of Division of Hematology and Medical Oncology, the E. Hugh Luckey Distinguished Professor of Medicine at Weill Cornell Medicine. Dr. Hidalgo received his MD from the University of Navarra in Pamplona, Spain in 1992, and a PhD from the University Autónoma of Madrid in 1997. He trained in medicine and medical oncology at Hospital 12 de Octubre in Madrid and at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, Texas. He also completed a fellowship program in anti-cancer drug development at the Institute of Drug Development in San Antonio. Prior to this position, he served as an assistant professor of medicine at the Division of Hematology and Oncology at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. In 2001, Dr. Hidalgo relocated to Johns Hopkins University to serve as the director of gastrointestinal oncology program at the Kimmel Comprehensive Cancer Center, where he also held the title of Associate Professor of Oncology. Dr. Hidalgo became director of the clinical research program of the Spanish National Cancer Center in 2009 and vice director of translational research in 2011. In 2015, he became the chief of division of hematology and oncology and director of the Rosenberg Clinical Cancer Center at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. Dr. Hidalgo also served at the Theodore W. and Evelyn G. Berenson Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School. His focus of research has been new drug development in pancreatic cancer. His group popularized the use of avatar mouse models for cancer research and recently contributed to the development and FDA approval of nab-paclitaxel for pancreatic cancer. Dr. Hidalgo's current research focuses on strategies for personalized medicine and immunotherapy in pancreatic cancer. I will start off with the questions now. Can you tell us a little about why you decided to focus on pancreas cancer? Dr. Hidalgo, if you can please lead us off.
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here in this Zoom meeting today. And let me start by saying thank you to all of you for the tremendous support and the work that you do for pancreatic cancer community, helping patients and gaining attention for this disease and raising funds, as I said before. Give me the money and don't ask the question, right? So helping to support research. I started interested in pancreas cancer very early in my career, actually during my residency training, and that sort of crystallized when I moved to San Antonio to do my fellowship in anti-cancer drug development. And the reason is that I happened to work with a doctor named Daniel Von Hoff, who's been one of the pioneers in drug development in this disease. Actually, I think all of the drugs that are approved today to treat pancreas cancer were at some point sort of developed or guided by him. He's very senior, and I was his fellow, and of course I kind of became interested in the research, because these days, and I'm talking at the end of the 90s, 97, 98, is when gemcitabine, which is the drug that's being approved to treat this disease for many, many years, was in clinical trials. And of course, we were treating in the early clinical trial patients with different diseases, pancreatic cancer included. And we made the observation that sometimes patients with pancreas cancer that, as you know, when they're advanced, they're highly symptomatic, poor appetite, having pain, improve, clinically improve. The pain will go away, they gain appetite, start needing lowered dosages of narcotics. And actually this drug was approved by the US FDA, not so much because of survival improvement, but because of symptoms improvement. And that sort of got my attention, and I realized how important pancreas cancer burden was, what a terrible disease. But we saw sort of the first light that we could make a little bit of progress just by developing the right drugs in the right clinical trials. And then I started just and continue working with the mouse models, the avatars that you mentioned, that helped to identify then nab-paclitaxel, Abraxane, which was also FDA approved now 7-8 years ago. And I have continued ever since my research in this disease. So going back to your question, it was the clinical observation that by introducing new treatments, we could improve the quality of life and the well-being of these patients. And that was what kind of got my attention.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. What advances in pancreatic cancer excite you? Dr. Hidalgo, why don't you start?
Well, we are, I think, getting to understand the biology of the disease in great detail. Every day we see very fundamental papers and research helping us to understand why these tumors develop, what are the key mutations, what are the key alterations. And I think that foundation is critical to make progress. There is also a significant area of development, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Matrician will talk about that because she works on that quite a bit, which is early diagnosis. And that's important because we are learning and that with the current armamentarium, radiation therapy, surgery, and the chemotherapy regimens that we have available, If we diagnose patients early and we can treat them in multidisciplinary manner, we are able to achieve cures in a much higher proportion of patients. So that early diagnosis, multidisciplinary management, second opinions was alluded to before, I think is a very important development as well. And of course, the area that I work the most is in new therapeutics, developing new drugs, transitioning them from preclinical studies in mouse models to patients. Currently, there are several areas of great importance and interest. One is immunotherapy. We're starting to understand why these tumors are not sensitive to the current immunotherapy regimens, and perhaps starting to sort of unlock that problem. Precision medicine, very important. Recently, last year, a couple of years ago, the first targeted agent for pancreas cancer, olaparib, for patients with BRCA mutation was approved. I think that's a very important development. More to come in that front. New areas, metabolism, how the cancer gets nutrients, how they hijack sort of the nutrition system of the body to survive, is teaching us that there are some vulnerabilities. And then what we've been working very actively in PanCan the last 3-4 years is trying to develop a clinical trial system that will allow us to run all these novel strategies very rapidly in a seamless adaptive clinical trial design, which is actually now open and enrolling in many institutions across the country, with very important support by pharmaceutical companies, but also big support by the US FDA, with the idea that we'll be able to evaluate those treatments very rapidly and get that to patients as soon as possible. So these are a few of the areas that I think are more relevant. You mentioned in your introduction that we're still at 10%. That's not a good number, but I feel optimistic that by working together and continue investing in research and conducting intelligent research, we'll improve that very soon.
Good to hear. Lynn, I know you are leading PanCan's early detection initiative. Is that what you were most excited about?
Yeah, well, first let me say hi, New York. Hi, everybody who's joining us from all over. Great to spend a little time with you and to talk about advances in the field. And yes, I am excited about early detection. We need more people like Stu, who was able to go to surgery, and we need more long-term survivors like Stu. And early detection is one of the ways that we can get there. We tend to think, and for many years, we've been interested in individuals who have a genetic risk for pancreatic cancer, either family history or a known genetic alteration. And we've been studying that and trying to find ways to identify those people and to look at surveillance programs that will help. We haven't been as successful in trying to identify sporadic pancreatic cancer, so that other 90% that doesn't have a genetic risk. How do we find them earlier? Until relatively recently, we kind of feel that we have a handle on a group that is higher risk, that if we could screen them early, we could find the cancer earlier. And that group is those with new onset diabetes. So diabetes, it looks like type 2 diabetes, blood sugar goes up, but in a small percent of those cases, it's actually diabetes that's caused by a very early pancreatic cancer. And if we could distinguish that kind of diabetes caused by pancreatic cancer from regular type 2 diabetes, and we could get those people screened right at that time, we believe that we could catch pancreatic cancer about 3 years earlier than what we can now. And that would certainly give us the opportunity to get more people to surgery and to have more therapeutic options. So that's a study that PanCan is supporting. We've got our protocol ready. We're about ready to start our first our first site open, and we're ready to go on that.
That's great. Thanks, Lynn. So next up, COVID-19. The pandemic has obviously impacted everything. Can you share how it has impacted the way you treat and help pancreatic cancer patients? Lynn, if you could start first and provide a view on how PanCan has managed to provide services during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, certainly COVID has impacted all of us in New York, certainly across the country, across the globe. So it's certainly been quite an experience to learn how to pivot rapidly and to adjust to that. For PanCan, one of the very first priorities was to make sure that the call center was still available, to make sure we knew that, as you said earlier, Jenna, pancreatic cancer didn't stop, even though there was a pandemic we were all dealing with. So the first priority was to make sure that that people were available by phone, by email, and that service could still be provided. And I'm quite pleased to say that we didn't miss a day, that we had to move. We have case managers that have always worked from the office, and that many of them had desktop computers, and we had to convert them to laptop computers and get them out to their homes, get everything set up so that would happen. So that was clearly one of our first priorities. But then PurpleStride was clearly a big priority for the organization. We were going to have to convert PurpleStrides to virtual formats. How we were going to do that, and how were we going to make sure that that transition occurred. So the organization has gone through quite a few changes over the last year to adapt to that. We were part of a global survey on how the pandemic has affected organizations like PanCan, advocacy organizations. And I'm pleased to say that, we did pretty good. A lot of places really have struggled because of the pandemic, and we feel like we're coming through it, that we reacted quickly, and that we're in essence hitting our stride and back on track despite all these advances. So there will be silver linings. Things like the Zoom call are perhaps silver linings to some of this, and we'll continue to try to look for those, and to, as we adapt, to take the good things we've learned and keep them.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Dr. Hidalgo, if you can share how this pandemic impacted the way you treat and help pancreatic cancer patients.
Yeah, sure. As you alluded to, back in March, April in New York, and New York Presbyterian Hospital was one of the most hospitals with larger number of cases. We were really full with many COVID diagnoses. Our hospital, basically, we have to convert almost every OR, every resource into COVID units, and so what did we do in medical oncology, pancreas cancer included? A few things. First, we developed very rapidly televisits. So all the telemedicine system now is integrated in the medical records and in the EPIC system, so you can do consults basically from the medical records, from the same page you are working with when you see patients face-to-face in the hospital through Zoom. When we finish at 9, have an hour, I have a visit with a patient, I'll do it by Zoom. And that allows us to maintain sort of the care of our patients even from distance. Second, we of course closed many clinical trials, but we kept open those that were critical for very serious diseases, pancreas cancer being one of them. I mean, COVID is a terrible disease, but pancreas cancer is not less. So we tried to keep open studies that were critical to provide good care and opportunities for the patients that need it. And then we sort of redesigned our entire operation so that we could continue administering infusions, administering chemotherapy in a safe manner, while most of the hospital was basically doing COVID care. And one of the things that we did, just to give you an example, is we developed, or we created a COVID positive infusion area. So patients who had COVID disease, but were not very ill, and did not need to be admitted, but still required transfusions or painkillers or antibiotics. They could continue coming to the hospital and receive their care. It was very, very stressing. I actually have to say that, being always as division chief, I've been amazed on how hard the staff, the nurses, the doctors, the hospital, the entire system sort of work to provide care for COVID patients, but also maintaining sort of our basic operations for diseases so important as pancreatic cancer. Now we have this other wave, but it's by no means close to what it was back in the spring, and it's getting down. In New York, it's getting down quite substantially. It's about 3-4% the positivity rate. So the last few months we have kept our operations basically running 100%.
Yeah, the medical.
One important, if I can say an additional comment, is that we know that many patients delayed going to the doctor, seeking care, even if they were with some symptoms, because of concern or because of lack of access. As you learn about potential friends or family members or people who may be suffering symptoms that are consistent or suspected of pancreas cancer, just advise them to go to the doctor. Don't stay at home, because this disease, I mean, a few weeks is just horrible.
So, as you said, Doctor, the medical community really had to pivot during this time, and they really did not skip a beat. So everyone did such an incredible job. Speaking of our medical community, we see a collaboration between the medical community here in New York City and PanCan. Could you share why the relationship with PanCan is so important? Dr. Hidalgo, if you would like to start with that.
Yes, as a physician, as a researcher, having the opportunity to collaborate with organizations like PanCan is critical. There are multiple reasons why I say that. One is a fantastic community to share knowledge, to work together, to learn from each other, and to be able to participate in projects that we, as isolated, could not be able to do. Second is because they have done a very amazing work on raising funds and supporting through grants fundamental and clinical research, and being able to contribute to that, to participate, to help in the review process, but also applying and receiving funds to conduct the research that is cutting edge. I think is critical. As I said before, resources and support and funds is crucial, and PanCan is one of the sources where we go to get this support. And finally, the Precision Promise project that I've been working closely the last few years, I think is just an amazing initiative, and I think it's going to be the way that we will be able to really test very rapidly, effectively, new treatment strategies in this disease, and I'm convinced that progress will be faster. And it was PanCan and the PanCan team and its leadership, its supported, who put this together. And I think it's just been an amazing project that will bear a lot of fruits in the future.
It's great to hear. Lynn, could you share why the relationship with these medical communities is so important to PanCan?
Sure. What we really want to do is we want more survivors. We want longer survivors, healthier lives. And in order to do that, we need to work with the providers, we need to work with the pharma industry, the medical community. And what we've realized is we're so much stronger together than any of us are individually. And so PanCan's role is really as a convener, as a facilitator, a nudger, you know, kind of getting people together and getting them moving in all in one direction, pulling the rope all together in one direction is really where we see we can make really major advances in this field. And that's really part of our role. But that's all we do is convene them. They're the ones that are the experts. They're the ones that, that have intimate knowledge of the disease. I see Dr. DiPriori on the phone. It's the biopharma industry as well. We need to bring them to the table. We need to be everybody together working on this. And as Dr. Hidalgo said, things like Precision Promise are how we're doing that, how we're setting up a system where all these different groups can work together, and we think it will make it much easier, much faster, much will really make advances much more rapidly, doing it all together, working together than any of us can do on our own.
Great. Perfect. So this is our last question. As you both are aware, the funds that we raise for PurpleStride help to fund research, advocacy, and directly helps pancreatic cancer patients and caregivers through PanCan's patient services. What would you say to the PurpleStride and PanCan supporters on this call this afternoon about the impact that they are making? Lynn, why don't we start with you?
Well, first, a great big thank you. And yes, you are making a difference. You really are making an impact. And I really think of it kind of in two ways. I think of it as a shorter term urgent impact for individuals facing this disease. We have Patient Central there. We have a place to call. That so often pancreatic cancer is a brand new experience for someone when they're faced with it. And yet they can talk to someone who's really facing this, helping people face this day in, day out, has a lot of experience, has colleagues to talk to, really studied this, you know, who can really give that kind of help and support that you need right then and right there. So that's one of the big ways to make an impact on an individual basis. The other way is on for the research. How are we going to make advances for future patients? And how are we going to take the knowledge and the information that we're gaining day in and day out and turn it into benefit for patients? That's where, again, PanCan can help. One way is through our advocacy efforts. The Recalcitrant Cancer Research Act would not have happened without the advocacy efforts of PanCan supporters. And because of that, I can count at least $200 million more dollars that the National Institutes of Health spent on pancreatic cancer that we didn't have before. And so that's a very tangible increase in research. The research that PanCan does, the Precision Promise, the early detection initiatives that we've talked about, our grants program, supporting junior investigators. Those are all ways that we build the future for the research in this disease. And it's through that very continuously learning, continuously applying that learning to the disease. That's how we're really going to make a difference. That's a real impact that you have through your support, that you have on the field for the patients today and the patients for tomorrow.
Dr. Hidalgo, what would you say to PanCan supporters today?
Well, thank you very much for all the work that you do. As I hope you saw during these few remarks, there's an amazing number of very important activities going on. None of those would be possible without your work, your support, you helping the organization in so many different ways. And It has to do with the call center. Another amazing program that wasn't mentioned is the Know Your Tumor program. The patients can have their tumor profile and tested for molecular targets. And there was a very important paper done by PanCan entirely, that was published a year and a half ago, showing that really, if you are able to get this test done and you find a target and you compare that target with a drug and administer the drug to patients, the survival is much better. So these are very amazing programs. Precision Promise, another one, the early detection, that are sort of available and running because of your tremendous support. So thank you very much. We can still do more, but you're doing amazing, and just keep on going.
Thank you. So, and thank you from myself for all that you do, and even just for joining on this call today. And you know, anything that you can do for PurpleStride, or contact your companies to potentially start a corporate team, anything that you can do will help make a difference. We do have a few minutes for some questions. So if you have a question, please put them in the chat box. We have one so far, and it is, what do patients want for an approvable outcome? Lynn or Dr. Hidalgo?
So, you know, the main criteria for approval has been survival, but that is, I think, changing. Early, back in the days, late 90s, as I said before, gemcitabine was approved because of quality of life. There was a survival benefit, small, but the major impact of the drug that I started working on in those days is that patients, as I said, felt better. And we developed some metrics to sort of document that, based on improvement in functional status, the need for narcotics, weight gain, appetite. So there are a number of parameters. But recently, olaparib, which is the last drug to be approved, was approved based on progression-free survival, not overall survival, in a trial that investigated whether after chemotherapy in patients who have these genetic mutations in the DNA repair pathways, BRCA1, BRCA2, PALB2, and some others, if after chemotherapy, stopping the chemotherapy and switching to olaparib versus just doing placebo, not doing any active treatment, olaparib showed improvement in progression-free survival, not in overall survival, just in progression-free survival. That was an outcome that the FDA considered important enough to approve the drug. So I think that in the overall survival, for sure, but in the maintenance situation, progression-free survival, meaning time until the disease gets worse with a treatment that is well tolerated, will be also an outcome that regulatory agencies and patients would like the drugs to be approved based on.
Great. We have, let's see, I'm reading the next question. Will passively acquired PROs potentially be approvable QOL outcome?
I'll take a stab at that to start with. You know, the references to survival has been the gold standard for clinical trials, but that from a patient perspective, it's also quality of life. There is also and Dr. Hidalgo mentioned that it's noticed that drugs that attack the cancer also make the patient feel better. But is there an opportunity to really focus in on those drugs that really take care of symptoms, that take care of, in essence, energy, kind of an overall a much more patient-centric rather than quite so tumor-centric. And the PROs is the patient-reported outcome. So what is the patient feeling? If we do clinical trials where we get a lot of information on how patients feel, is that the type of thing that we should acknowledge is a drug that is as useful as one that is making the tumor smaller, if it's really taking care of making the patient feel healthier? And I think that's a very good point. And I think that it is that one thing that PanCan has been very interested in and certainly incorporated into Precision Promise was this symptom management and care of the whole patient, and paying attention to that and supportive care type of efforts. I think we have a way to go, but yes, my impression is that the regulatory agencies, the FDA, and the community has become much more interested in this as an approach, and is putting a lot more effort into identifying pathways where we can take advantage of that, where we can use PROs, where we can use these quality of life measures as a way to really to advance the field and to get drugs to patients that will really help them with their disease.
Okay. So last question that we have is there an alternative to I'm sorry, I'm butchering these drug names, fluorouracil?
There is an oral formulation of fluorouracil called capecitabine Seloda, which sometimes we use, but in terms of side effects it's quite similar. So the short answer is that at the moment there is not an alternative drug to 5-fluorouracil. We still use 5-fluorouracil as part of combination regimens, both in patients who are newly diagnosed or those that develop resistance to chemotherapy. We can treat also the patients, as I said before, with gemcitabine and Abraxane, which is the alternative regimen. It's not necessarily less toxic. It depends on what you combine and the dosages, but unfortunately, those are the things that we have at the moment. That's the reason that we really need to continue and develop treatments that are more effective but also better tolerated.
Great, thank you. And thank you for answering all of the questions today. So this will be the end of our Meet the Experts panel. I just want to thank all of our speakers and sponsors for your commitment to this fight. We are so fortunate in the New York City region to have the finest doctors and researchers in the world right in our own backyard. So on behalf of the New York City affiliate, I would like to thank you all for joining us today and for your continued dedication to PanCan and PurpleStride. We look forward to seeing you virtually on April 24th. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.